Hello, friends. It's time for Talk Fort Dodge, the show that uncovers the stories behind the houses and the heart of our community. I'm Jeremiahjcondon.
And I'm Todd McCubbin, and today we are here with Police Chief Dennis Quinn. He's been on the at Police Chief for about a year now, but I'm going to let him give us some more information about that later. First, let's do a market update.
All right, Todd, we have 73 active listings in Fort Dodge, which it's kind of been lingering right there for the last
I was going to say, it hasn't moved
months.
much.
We talk about average sales, and they're staying right at about that 155 compared to last year's 130,000. People are paying about 95.38% of the list price. So if a house is at 100,000, people are paying about 95.
Okay.
So that's kind of the going average right now. And one thing I want to talk about is average days on the market. Right now we're at 72. It's 4 days more than last year. But we're small town Iowa. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of people that come here from other states. And sometimes the first thing they say is, how long has that house been on the market?
Right.
Well, I hate that question because in small town Iowa, we might only have like 5 true buyers for that price range. Like you have a $200,000 house, you might only have 5 people. Well, if the one bedroom is off, it doesn't work. Or if the garage is too small, 3 of the families are gone. Right. Doesn't have a fenced-in yard, another one's gone. So once you go through those 5 people,
then you're waiting for the 6th person to show up eventually when it happens.
Yeah. So now we got to manufacture a buyer. You know, we got to find somebody who wasn't planning on buying, and
or wait till somebody shows up, because eventually people are going to move here. I mean, it's a great community. We say that all the time. So, and we're getting busier and busier. There are a lot of people, a lot of people in that pipeline of people that are going to be hiring soon in Fort Dodge.
But I would guess, like, if you lived in Des Moines and the house was on the market for 100 days, I'd be like, okay, well, you have like 500 buyers in that range. Why isn't it selling?
Why did 500 people say no to this house? Makes sense.
Just because a house is sitting does not mean there's anything wrong with it. And I have one interesting fact. The average American takes 182 days to unpack all the moving boxes after they move.
Man, I'm above average. We still have boxes in the basement we haven't opened, and we've been there 12 years.
Yeah, but doesn't when you move make it so that it almost makes you clean house just a little bit, because then once you put it away, then you realize you don't need it, so then you just kind of leave it instead of putting it back out. I mean, that seems traditionally how that works anyway.
That's why those boxes are still in the basement.
That's right.
Like, I'll just
keep
buy a new
pushed
one.
behind other things.
There is no stat on this. I'm just making this up, but I think about 10% of sellers buy some kind of dumpster and just haul crap out.
Yes.
Well,
they kind of tell them
this, and
that's the best time to do your spring cleaning.
That's
yes,
right.
it is.
And now I don't have to move it.
That's right.
Moving's terrible.
That's right. Less stuff to carry and move back.
That's right. What's feature house of the week?
Feature house of the week, 130 Country Club Drive for $395,000 is a 3-bed, 2 full bath, another half bath, and a 3/4 bath. 2,616 square feet, and that's the main level.
Yep.
And there's also square foot in the basement.
There's a nice family room in the basement. The rest unfinished. So, I mean, there's probably 1,500 square feet of unfinished area in the basement you can do whatever with.
In the country club for 2,600 square foot with everything, 3-car garage, that's a steal.
That is.
In my opinion. Mm-hmm. So this is a pretty awesome house.
If this is in your price range, make sure you call Todd today to come show it to you, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or if you want to see it tomorrow or any other day, call me.
There you go. So, Chief Quinn, thank you for being here today. We appreciate you taking time out of your super busy schedule to be here. And I'd like to just start. Can you tell us about yourself? You've been police chief for about a year. How did you get to that point?
So I'm from Fort Dodge, born and raised. The only time I didn't live in Fort Dodge was when I attended University of Northern Iowa. As soon as I was done, moved right back here. Worked construction for a number of years, doing concrete construction, which I loved doing that. Love doing hard labor, doing that kind of building something and seeing kind of at the end what it looks like. You get a lot of satisfaction from that. But when I was a kid, I'd always dreamed of being a police officer. Obviously, life takes you in different directions sometimes. You go to school, and I went to school to be a teacher. Didn't end up being a teacher. Did construction. And then when I was working at a job back in 2008, I seen that there was an opening. They were hiring 3 officers. So I thought, I'm going to take a chance. And I put my application in. Along with like 40 or 50 other people, ended up getting hired. So that was 2008. And slowly I started on patrol like anybody else does. Loved it. I remember early on in my career on night shift and coming to in our building, we have a supervisor's window where the sergeant, lieutenant, and at that time a captain. Every shift had a captain. Coming to the window to get my paperwork, and I'm just smiling. I had this big smile on my face, and one of the veteran officers says to me, he goes, why are you always smiling? And I remember saying to him, like, I can't believe I get paid to go do some of this stuff. Like, how can you not be happy doing this? Like, he just looked at me kind of like, yeah, you'll learn. Yeah. Like, yeah, you'll
smile's
learn.
Not going to last
forever. You ain't going to have that always. But that just stuck with me. So, but, and then I slowly worked myself through the department. I was happy on patrol. Loved being a patrol officer, just types of calls you deal with, different people you deal with every single day, because no day is the same ever. The people you meet, not all of it is the negative stuff. So it's a lot of this positive stuff you get to do as well that you get to do on a day-to-day basis on patrol. But I was actually at our former police chief's house, Roger Porter. He asked me, I was pretty popular with for a while, to help do concrete projects for people when they needed something. And he wanted new steps put in front of his house. So I was at his house working on the steps, and there was a upcoming promotion for sergeant on patrol. And he'd asked me, like, are you planning on doing the application and going through the process? I said, no, I'm happy where I'm at. I like doing patrol. He said something that stuck with me and has stuck with me through my entire career. And he said, well, have you ever thought about who you're going to work for, like who you want to work for? And that started kind of resonating a little bit. And then he said, if not you, then who?
Right.
And that phrase has stuck with me throughout my entire career. So that got me thinking, like, all right, in all walks of life, people talk about, whether they're unhappy or they're complaining about, whatever their situation is. It made me think, okay, how can I sit and complain, or not that I was, but how can I be upset if I'm not trying to do something to change that?
You had some great leaders at the time, but you started looking at the people around you and, like, these are all great people, but do I want to work for this person?
Right. And it's what am I, if somebody, if we don't have people that step up to take different roles, doesn't have to necessarily be a leadership role, then how can we sit and, maybe not like the direction something's going or how things are being handled, whatever else it is, if we're not trying to actively do something to try to help with that? And it doesn't have to be in a leadership role or being the chief or sergeant or whatever. I mean, it could be, there's all different styles of leadership and different forms of leadership throughout any organization.
Well, even thinking about Roger and even taking that step back and going to the school system and doing what he does there. I mean, that's something that he could look at that and say, most people think this is a demotion, but this is something I've always wanted to do, and this is how I can change the world.
Absolutely. And it gives him a chance to, he's always had his kids were involved in schools, school sports, things like that. Just gives him an opportunity to stay kind of connected with that even as his kids move on. So,
absolutely.
I just thought, all right, I'm going to apply for this spot. We had great people that we were working for, so it wasn't, nothing against who I was working underneath at the time. I just thought this would give me an opportunity to have my voice maybe just a little bit be heard in the things that I wanted to accomplish. So I took that, eventually got promoted, went from sergeant on patrol to eventually then I put my name in for the lieutenant on patrol and got that position and worked that for a little while. And then eventually a new captain spot came open, so I tested for that, got that spot, and then was in charge of our criminal investigations division for a couple years. And then knew, obviously, with Roger's pending retirement coming, he actually came and spoke to me about it. And I can be honest, at the time, everybody in their career thinks about, oh, you're going to become, do you want to be the chief of police? Do you want to do something like that? It had honestly not been my goal to be the chief of police. I was very happy being the captain of investigations because it's still, in that position, I still got to go out and, help with search warrants, go to, different scenes, things like that, where I had, an administrative role as a captain, but I still got to go out and kind of
get my stuff and get your hands dirty.
Mm-hmm. Get myself in the field and get out and work alongside our detectives and our patrol officers, something that I really enjoy. Still get out and see people, talk to people, at scenes, things like that.
Do you get a chance to do that in your current role? If you're like, okay, I got to get out of the office for an hour, I'm going to go do some whatever.
I can. I do it every once in a while. It does get increasingly hard sometimes, try to carve time out. But every once in a while, if I hear something on the radio, I'll go out and I'll go take part in like a search warrant, go be there on the scene. I'm not going inside houses and searching and things like that anymore. But I mean, I still like to get out and kind of see, that part of the job still.
Yeah.
It's not my main role, obviously, but
Probably got to stay fresh a little bit too.
Yeah, well, and you like to get out and talk to the patrol officers and the detectives, and I see them inside the building, but not as often as you do when if you go out, actually get out in the street.
It's different seeing them in the middle of something and being there and helping them through it and giving them that,
100%.
that pat on the back or that,
like a team.
that advice.
Yeah, well, and just watching and being impressed with the work that they do. I mean, it's, having done that for years, it's amazing to watch them and the things that have changed even from the time from when I was in investigations and when I was on patrol, like, the different technology that we use and the different things like that. It's amazing. Some of the stuff. I mean, when I started, we had computers in our car, but they were just used to write tickets and do accident reports. Now we live through them, and every car has a cell phone now. And our pictures that we take at crime scenes that we used to have cameras for, now it's done with your cell phone and it automatically uploads into our computer program. It's just, you used to have to, take and manually download each one and all that. I mean, it's just, but that's technology. That's us just trying to keep up with everybody else. So, But then I went and applied for chief, went through the whole interview process, and I got selected, and it's been a roller coaster, and it's been an interesting first year.
Do people ever ask you, like, you're the police chief in Fort Dodge, you really took that job, or is it?
I just get a lot of people that are sitting there like, man, it was a rough go that first year. I mean,
my goodness.
It just, and I don't regret it at all. I'm glad I made the decision I made because I love my job. I love being the chief. It just gives me a different perspective, and and I think
it's probably one of those jobs you don't know exactly what you're getting yourself into until you're
there is no way to know what you're getting into. Just a lot of it, just because a lot of people look to you for the answers as to why something's happening, whatever else it is. Regardless that it's out of my control completely, what people do, but that's what people look at you for, which is expected, and I understand that. But I do love it, and I would say probably one of the greatest things that I get to see is I get to kind of, while I do have obviously a busy schedule, things like that, I get to try to steer the department hopefully in the direction that I think that we need to go as far as our department, as the community, what we need, things like that. And I am blessed because I have a great assistant chief. I have great captains that work with me in the front office, and I brag to anybody that will listen. And I think people don't realize is what a great department we have, the officers we have, the detectives we have. While we've had a difficult year this last year, if you look, we've made arrests on all these things. It's been, I can't begin to give enough praise to the job that these guys and girls have done. So I've count myself very blessed for where I'm at. So
it feels like a different community here. We went through all that, and I don't, knock on wood. It's, but it just feels like the community's in a different place. Even I feel that in the last 3 to 6 months, year, that we've really, really come a long way into finding ourselves and finding that rhythm of, okay, this is who we are now. We've got the people in place, and you guys, I feel like you're making a difference.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just day to day, and seeing what you read in the paper, and seeing what you see on Facebook, and seeing people defend Fort Dodge so often, and it's just, I think that's you. I mean, we've talked to Astra a couple of weeks ago. We've talked to all these different people, and I think it takes a village. And
absolutely.
Thanks for being part of that.
Yeah, no, we're very lucky. I mean, I can tell you one of the worst things that we've had to take part in was a baby homicide that we had a couple years ago, which was terrible. It was tough on the community, tough on our officers, everything else. But I can tell you, and I've said this to a couple different people, is through that process, like what you just said, I saw our community become their true colors come out. That
me the chills.
Because everybody, surrounded each other. Everybody was supporting each other. All the positive things that people were saying about trying to help in community, how important that is.
And we took that terrible event and made the state a better place, having the first baby box in the state put right here in Fort Dodge, and taking that tragedy and that awfulness and turning it into something that is going to save lives. I mean because they would have had an option.
Yep.
They might not have known, whatever, but they would have had that option there to say this baby deserves to live, and I'm making that decision for. And I was there for the ribbon cutting, and when she said, I'm making this decision because I love my child. And I like that gave me the chills too. But that came out of that terrible, terrible incident. And that's because of what you did, The fire department, the police department, the county, the community foundation, everybody putting their resources together to make that happen.
And that just goes to show, that shows you what Fort Dodge is.
Oh,
that
definitely.
kind of thing. That's the true Fort Dodge, not the little, press releases and the things of the terrible things that happen. That's a very, very, very small portion. The rest of, Fort Dodge is a great community. Mm-hmm. It's full of hardworking people that just want to, do their job, live their life, have fun, and just experience different things. It's not those negative things that we unfortunately have to put out every once in a while.
So one of the things I heard you say is like, I want it to go in the direction, maybe possibly a direction I want to go. And you're talking about how you were smiling through the hallway and everything before. Well, on New Year's Day, I was driving back into Fort Dodge, and I got pulled over for speeding. And I looked into my mirror, and the police officer that got out of the car had a smile on his face, and it was just like a good smile. Uh-huh. And then he came around on the other side, and he entered the conversation with a big smile on his face. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, and then we talked. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yep.
And I had the kids in the car, the wife's here, and it's like, yeah, sorry.
Yep.
And I got a ticket. But
a smile too. So a ticket with a smile.
But he was like happy and kind. And like I said that to my wife, like right as we were leaving, it's like, I hope he's like that with everybody. And I hope all the police officers are like that, because like, how could you even get mad at somebody who's happy to be there that day?
Right.
And it wasn't like an arrogant smile, like, haha, I gotcha.
Right. Yep.
It was like a legit, like, I'm just doing my job.
Yep.
And
happy to be doing
I'm
the
here
job.
and
I had a state trooper do that. I'm going to tell this story real fast because it's funny. I was coming off the Highway 20. I hit the cruise on accident and getting on the Colville Blacktop coming into town, and I was going, I think 68 and at 35, or right at the 45. Of course, the trooper caught me, turned around. I pulled over. He said, "Didn't I just pull you over a week ago?" And I'm like, "I haven't been pulled over since 1993. He goes, "What?" Man. I go, I run the cruise all the time. And, if I go over, it's a couple miles an hour. And he goes, "Oh, really?" He took my license, brought it back, came back. He goes, "Here's a warning. You were right."
It took that long in between. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Now I got to wait till I'm 80 before I can get another.
So you can get your next one.
But I wanted to talk just for a second, and I don't know, we can cut this out if it's not something you can talk about, but we were at Rotor somewhere the other day, and you talked about how 90% of victims in Fort Dodge are from 5% of the population. Is that something you can talk about on the podcast?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've kind of pushed out to as many people as would listen is, when people talk about Fort Dodge being violent, yes, do we have violent incidents? Yes, we do. Every community does. But something that's a little bit different than the national trend is that here in Fort Dodge, 90 or 95% of our violent incidents, the victim and the offender know each other. So the reason I think that's important is that basically tells you that there's just a very small population of our community that is involved in these violent incidents. As long as you are a everyday law-abiding citizen, you're surrounding yourself with, good people, you're more than likely not going to be a victim of some of these things.
So it's more like a one-on-one, I'm mad at Todd and I do something, but there's not like a lot of at random, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly. Right. Now, that isn't, that's not talking about property crimes, things like that. I mean, some of those things,
vandalism.
Your bike gets stolen out of your front yard. That was a crime of opportunity. That's going to happen.
Absolutely, yes.
You didn't lock your car, it's going to get stolen.
Yes, things like that. It's the violent incidents that we have seen that from the statistics that we can find is that as long as you aren't, basically, if you're not doing bad things probably are not going to happen to you. And so the reason I think that's important is it does change that narrative of what people, you hear some people say when, like you had mentioned, bad mouth in Fort Dodge or doing whatever. We're a safe community. As long as you're doing the things that you're supposed to do, you're going to be fine. I mean, I go for walks through this town all the time. I walk by your house all the time. I mean, I feel completely safe when I am out.
My wife and I love the bike trails. We got e-bikes, and I mean, they go through all those neighborhoods. Sometimes you think, but you get down there and they're just pretty, and you're like, driving it down Mason Drive the first time, and I remember Mason Drive when I was a kid. You didn't want anything to do with Mason Drive, but riding your bike down there and then catching the trail at the bottom of it and going over by Amigos and all that, you're just, this is so cool and so pretty, and I've never felt unsafe there.
No.
I did in the 80s, but now I feel just fine.
Yeah, no, and you're right. That trail system, it's great. We use it all the time. I love just walking through town because and that's it's pretty amazing when I'm walking how many people wave.
Oh yeah,
and that is something I think is pretty important to note because these are
you don't get middle fingers.
Most of the time, no, not when I'm like,
I was with the deputy sheriff the other day that did.
Yeah, maybe back when I was in a patrol car, but when you're out walking, no. I mean, and it's great because some of the people when you're walking, but some of them it's just people driving by that just wave. That's I think that's indicative of what Fort Dodge is. Like, hey, you're out on a Sunday. Hey, how are you?
Maybe we need to start the Dodger wave. That'd be cool. We got the Jeep wave because I get a Wrangler, so you got to get the two fingers up, and of course on the motorcycle, you got to get the
below.
two down.
Yep.
We need the Dodger wave.
Yeah, it's I love this community. I
do
just
too.
do. It's just a great place and a great place to live.
All right, you want to tell us a little bit about training? What are the training you have to go through to be a police officer and continuing training? I'm sure that's a big deal too.
So, to be a police officer in the state of Iowa. When we get you through the process, we hire you. We have to send you to the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy. The Iowa Law Enforcement Academy is 16 weeks of training. It's Monday through Friday that you get to come home on the weekends. And that training is during the daytime and then sometimes nighttime. And that's the basis of your training. That's teaching you criminal law and traffic law and, precision driving and firearm skills and your defensive tactics and all those things. And that's it. It's basically giving you kind of like that baseline of how to become a police officer and the things you need to know, your knowledge.
So it's like Police Academy,
yes.
a movie back in the 80s that I have not seen for a while.
Not with a little less hijinks that I think that was involved.
It was Tackleberry.
With that stuff, yeah. I mean, a little bit less of that stuff, but yeah. I mean, it's in theory, yes. Yes.
In theory.
No, yeah, Hightower's not in there. Tackleberry's not in there. Michael Winslow's not doing the noises and things like that. But... So and once you graduate from that, we have you go through what we call field training, which is you ride with one of our officers. There's no set timeline on that because every person's a little bit different on how they learn and how they get through everything. And then we have a manual that basically it has check marks. Yep, they've learned how to do this. Yeah, they've learned how to do this. They've read our policy manual. Yep, they've experienced an OWI. Things like that we feel that are important that you experience before we put you out on your own.
Yeah. Well, you can learn everything from a book,
sure.
But then you go out in the field, and it's not anything that you read in a book.
Absolutely.
Because that's how real estate is. They teach you all about these rules and everything, and then they throw you out there, and you're like, that's not what it's like.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why our favorite way of actually getting someone through is get them hired, let them ride in a car for a little while with an officer or two prior to going to the academy. And we feel that's important because it gives you an idea before you go start to learn kind of a picture of what you're going to experience. So then I think that helps you. And then when we get you back, then at some point during the academy, you get that light bulb moment like, okay, yeah, I've dealt with that. I've talked to somebody about this. That's done that. That's a really
good idea.
That is a good idea.
It gets them a little bit of that experience ahead of time. And then when they come back, then it's just that much easier for them to apply it when they, start going through the field training process. And then eventually we get them out on their own. So that's the baseline training to be a police officer, but we're also required by the state to have minimum of 12 in-service hours a year for various different things. But there's also some that are mandatory, like harassment training, DHS training, things like that, or HHS now, not DHS. But we as a department, we try to do anywhere from 3 to 5 trainings a year that are anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. And those trainings can be legal updates with county attorney. It can be firearms recertification. It can be just some firearms courses. It can be harassment training. It can be all kinds of different things. We try to bring in different people to teach us different things to keep us fresh, keep us up to date on case law, things like that. But it just this job is ever changing, so we can't stay. Just with what the academy teaches you, because from the time you go to the academy a year later, things can change enough.
They're trying to change the rules and laws every day, right? I mean,
right.
Well, they do change the rules and laws every day.
Yeah.
Right. So so that's our in-service training, but then we also once a month through police1.com, there's training you can do on there. So we assign officers, which is just they sit in their car on their computer and they'll watch a video on,
So they're not sleeping.
Yeah, right. No, they should not be sleeping. No. So and then that gives them just a little bit of training there. But then we also, throughout the year, depending budget wise, we try to send people to different trainings, whether that's like a interview interrogation type training, a roadside interdiction training, different things that hopefully they can bring back. And obviously we utilize, in their job. Sometimes we send people to train the trainer type classes so they can bring that back. And then at department trainings, they can teach our officers these things, which is just, great for us because then it saves us a little bit of money sending someone to something.
And sometimes you just need like the 3 main ideas out of that class.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. And
you can narrow it down to what's important for us
Yep.
and what we've dealt with recently.
Yep. So yeah, it's training is constant. It's all the time. If I could get an unlimited training budget, I guarantee you my officers would just constantly be requesting to go to things. But unfortunately, with budgets, it's what we can afford to send and
what you can afford to not have on staff.
Right.
As it's going.
Yes, absolutely. And the bad part is that with our training, a lot of times our training budget for sending people to continuing training comes out of the same line as sending people to the academy. Sending somebody to the academy, by the time it's all said and done, is about $9,000. So when your budget's say $45,000 and you send 2-3 people in a year, all of a sudden that training budget just shrinks.
Yeah. Now there's no money to send anywhere else.
Exactly. So everybody here, nationwide is officers need more training. Officers need more training.
We agree.
Agreed. I mean, I would love it. It would be great if we had a unlimited, pot of money to pull from, because we would send people all the time. Because you can never have too much knowledge, as I'm sure you guys, would agree with.
I just can't imagine like how many different scenarios you have.
Right.
I think you watch a baseball game and there's so many scenarios that can happen, and you have to be ready for any and all of them.
Yep.
But you're talking about like going into people's houses, but then like what you see on the news about schools, and I know you've probably had some calls already about going into schools and doing stuff.
Yep.
And it's like, I can't even imagine some of the things you don't even probably study or know about. Like,
right.
You just get
You're
a call
experiencing
the
the first time when you're there. That's why a lot of times I say that officers have to be like a Swiss Army knife, because you never know what call you go to. What gadget am I going to pull out of that? Okay, am I going to need this? Am I going to need this? Yeah. Because police officers, we get called to so many different types of things. A lot of times we're kind of a catch-all. If somebody calls into the comm center with a problem, a lot of times they send us, even though, because they can't figure out necessarily what it is. And we go there, we kind of decipher, okay, you need public works because it's this, or, fire department would be better because you need this, or you need, somebody, there's a problem with your house, you need to call somebody else. Like we are that Swiss Army knife. We just got to go and try to diagnose what the problem is and then help them to try to figure out the best way to solve it. And it's not always obviously with arresting someone or, something major like that. Sometimes it's just simple things.
Sometimes just showing up.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny you say that, because a lot of times some people call and it's people that just want somebody to talk to, whether it's somebody that lives alone, they're by themselves, they're lonely, whatever else it is. So they call, our officer comes there, talks to them for a little bit, maybe, just give them a little bit of time, and then that helps them. And we move on to the next call. So yeah, it's a lot of different things every day. Like I said, every day is different. So
never a dull moment.
No.
And I want to point out, I made that joke earlier about them sleeping in the police car, but can you tell us, one of the things, you were at Rotary, I think, I'm taking a lot of this from that. You talked about every incident or every major thing that happened takes so much time working on the computer, writing up the report, and doing all that stuff. And they're doing training in that car. So I think I make that, but no, they're in there, they're working, and they're working hard. I know a lot of police officers, and I'll pull up next to them when they're parked in the high school, or I'll pull up next to them when they're parked at Frenzy. And they'll be like, "Oh no, I'm typing this report. I'm doing this, and I'm doing that." And it's a tough job, and it's a lot more mental than I think most people.
I hope they're busy typing that while I'm driving 35 miles per hour past them,
so they don't have time to give you that ticket that you probably deserve. Yeah, definitely. You are 100% right. Our officers' squad cars are their offices. Like anybody else, when you're sitting in your office and you're typing, doing whatever, that's what they're doing. They're just doing it in their car, and the reason we have them do it in their car is it makes them visible. And that's why you see them like sitting in parking lots, things like that. Is we want people to see the car. Yes, they could easily find a nice spot they could back into and it'd be kind of out of sight. But we don't want that, actually, even though it's probably a little safer than having an officer just sit out in the open. But when people see them, somebody, maybe if we have them parked near like the high school, and maybe people don't run that stop sign because there's an officer sitting right there.
Yep.
So we like them to be out. People can see them, and maybe the people in that neighborhood think, okay, maybe they feel a little safer because there's a squad car nearby. But it also is because if we had every officer, if we're taking, because we take about 4,000 to 5,000 case reports a year, if they're all sitting at the PD working on those, they're if somebody calls for an emergency, our police department's downtown, if somebody calls with something, major out near the water park, look how long it takes us to get
time.
there. Yeah.
And that's how it used to work, is you'd go back to the police station, write up your reports, and do all that. How many fewer police officers do we have now than we did then?
I want to say from before my time, I think they said that we used to have 50 plus officers. And a lot of the shifts were up to 12 officers per shift. And there was 2-man cars sometimes and 1-man cars back, years ago. Well, fully staffed, we're at 40. And right now we're at 38 because we had 2 retire here recently. So
we're down 20%.
Yeah, down quite a few people.
But we also don't have the people sitting in the office writing stuff. They're in their cars. They're trying to be active. And you still run out of time, and you still get overtime and that stuff.
Absolutely. Because like you said, I mean, yes, we take on average probably 30,000 to like 35,000 calls for service a year, which is anything from, our homicides to, neighbors blowing their grass on somebody's driveway, and they want us to come and kind of,
Is that 100 a day?
I mean, it's
35. There's 365 days in a year. 30. Do the math back. That's 100 calls a day coming into that.
Yeah, different, and that can be anything from. Some of those are just a phone call, so we call them a PBX, and it's just somebody calls in, wants advice from an officer.
Yep.
You can clear that one pretty fast. Some of those neighborhood disputes, maybe you're there for 5-10 minutes before it's done, or even something, my mail's missing or whatever it is. There's the really, really low level things that don't take very much time, and then you have the homicides, where then those take hundreds of hours of time, and that's taking as much resources as we can basically throw at it. So, there's anywhere in between that right there. So
when something big comes up, you can't stop doing the other things either.
Exactly.
You got to continue to patrol and continue to.
Exactly, because the calls don't stop coming in. Now, just like every day, we prioritize anything from, if we have assaults going and things like that, those obviously are a little bit higher priority. So those kind of, that's where we throw our resources to. And then, unfortunately, the people that call in about, their mailbox got hit or their bike got stolen. It's not that we don't want to go and respond to those things. It's just those aren't as emergent, so they have to wait.
It's still going to be broken in 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And
call back on Tuesday around 3.
Yeah. And and the bad part is, when I was speaking to a group this morning, I said, unfortunately, when we have those things, somebody who maybe had their bike stolen, that may be the only time they ever call the police in their entire life, because maybe they just have never had a situation where they've had to call the police.
Yeah.
So it's bad when they feel like we're not coming because we feel like it's not important that we come. And it's not that at all. We do know that it's important to them because that's important to that person. Yeah, they're not a victim of a homicide or an assault, but that is the most important thing to them right now. So I wish we could get to some of those calls faster, but unfortunately sometimes we just can't. And I appreciate most people are pretty patient with us when it comes to that, especially if our dispatchers are explaining, hey, the officers are busy, they'll get there when they can. But it does resonate with me. That's why I want more officers, things like that, because yes, it's not the biggest thing in the world, but it's important to them.
Right.
And that's
I love
our
how
job.
you say that, because they want to hear something back.
Right.
Like they want some type of feedback. Or,
absolutely. They just want to know that
answer.
what their need is getting taken care of.
Yep.
And that's our job. And we want to get there as fast as we can. Just unfortunately, sometimes we got to push other things to the front of the heap first.
So I never thought about that, but you're kind of in the service industry too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's customers. I mean, customer service is important. I mean, you don't look at this job as being that, but it truly is, because, and then when we make people happy and they're, satisfied with our service, then we get more support and things like that. Yep. Whether people look at it that way or not, it really is that way. Because, thankfully, the majority of our calls aren't the homicides and aren't those huge things. So everybody's situation they have is the most important thing to them right there. So it's just how we have to look at it.
So we've talked a little bit about challenges over the last year since you've been doing this, but I really want to hear what you think your greatest success is. Or even as a department, if you want to back it up, not just you personally, but as a department, what's the greatest success over the last year?
Greatest success. It's going to sound weird, but I want to say it's the push that we're doing for the case for 8 right now. And the reason I say that is with this last year, the way it was, our community was hurting. Our community was tired. Our community was, my officers were tired. My officers were hurting. coming up with a way to try to interrupt that, to change the narrative, to try to give some, and I don't want this to sound bad, but give some hope. Like,
right.
Hey, we're trying to do something. Because people are looking at us like, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing to try to not have this,
And
this
before that, you just
Give
kind of
them a
felt like we're
little
sitting
relief.
on our hands doing,
Right.
we're trying, but it's words. The case for 8 puts some action.
Right. And this is, which I realize it's controversial sometimes with people with, this franchise fee that we've been trying to push. But I look at it like this is us coming up with an idea, with a way to interrupt what's happened. Is there any guarantee that hiring more officers is going to stop all this from happening? Absolutely not. But the fact that we have the city manager, the mayor, the city council, and we have a lot of people that are behind us in something like this, it also gives our officers a lot of hope, and it makes them feel like, all right, the community supports us. The community's behind us. Unfortunately, it got stopped with the petition that went around, but that, we're still working on it, try to see what we can do. But I think that's a huge success just because it's something that we have, we kind of tried to do it last year, but we knew budget-wise it wasn't going to work when we were trying to add a few officers. But this was a legitimate effort that was put forth by a lot of different people. And I can tell you that talking to our officers about it, once I finally revealed that we were trying to do this, you could see it was like, all right, yeah, this is good. This is important.
Can you tell us, not all our listeners watch this every day. I've heard you speak several times about it. I know Jeremiah has, and I keep an eye on this stuff, but we have listeners that don't know what the case for 8 is. Can you kind of explain what that is?
So the case for 8 was, it's coupled along with what the franchise fee. So franchise fee was something that the city can do. It's through Mid-American, and there's over 200 communities in the state of Iowa that already do this. And it's adding this fee to your Mid-American bill. It's 5% is what we were proposing. And so that's, 5% of what your total Mid-American bill is will then be collected by the city. And then it would go to help fund officers. And that's where the case for 8 came from. And our idea is compared to some other communities our size, we kind of looked at, different places like Mason City, Marshalltown, Clinton, Ottumwa, relatively same population. We have less officers than those other communities do. Not every single one, I can't remember which one it was, has maybe 40 or 42, but we were looking at it like, all right, they have more officers than us, and we have a little bit more on the violent crime. So we were trying to figure out a way to try to increase our numbers. So we came up with the case for 8, which is our plan is over the next 2 years, try to hire 8 officers. Our first year would be to try to hire 5, and then the next year try to hire 3. And those 8 positions would be 4 to patrol because we have 4 shifts, so 1 officer per shift. That's exciting because that's more people to be able to respond to calls. It's more visibility, so that's maybe less wait time, like we had talked about previously, for officers to have to, or people to have to sit and wait for officers to show up. More people, more staff on scene when we have these major incidents, homicides, things like that. So that would be the first thing that we'd be trying to fill. And then we'd also be adding a detective to our criminal investigations division. Excuse me. And that would be a general crimes position. And that would be to help with all the major cases we have, another investigator, obviously, to pour through evidence and go, be assigned some of these cases. And then the last 3 positions would be what we were calling the community action team. And it's exciting. It's kind of something we came up with. It would basically, this position is kind of a hybrid between patrol and investigator. They would be out, in squad cars, not necessarily marked squad cars, but they would be driven by whatever's happening in the community. That can be a rash of car burglaries. It could be, criminal mischiefs like last year when we had all those windows shot out, things like that. And the reason that's important is a lot of times when we have some of these incidents, like you had mentioned before, Jeremiah, that we can't, once we have something, we can't just keep having patrol go investigate those things all the time because the calls are still coming in for, other calls for service from community members. So it's limited how much follow-up work they can do all the time because they still have to respond to these things. And our investigators have a lot of major incidents that they're trying to investigate. So every time we have something big happen, now all their focus gets drawn away from all their other casework that they're doing, and they have to go deal with this. Well, now all of a sudden those other cases are just sitting there in limbo until they can go back to what they were doing. This community action team, we would be able to say, all right, we've had this string of burglaries and, up near Dodger Stadium, for example, or something. And now we say, okay, this is the information we have from the different reports we're taking. We're looking for a white car and 2 males, whatever else it is. Go and just try to pour those resources into that. Our patrol still keeps doing what they're doing. Investigators keep doing what they're doing. Yeah, you still collaborate and help each other when you can, but they would be able to focus on that just a little bit more. And then we would also use them in our major incidents, like our homicides, things like that. If investigators are doing interviews, working the crime scene, things like that, we bring these gals in and say, all right, we're looking for this potential suspect, this witness, this, we want you to canvass this neighborhood for cameras. We want you to do this. We push those resources there, let our patrol go back to doing what they're doing, let our investigators handle the scene, handle some of those things, and go find these people, go seek them out, go try to find them, hunt them down so that our investigators can then talk to them. Hopefully bring cases to resolution a little bit quicker, but would just be a huge resource. And then on top of it, having those community action team guys and gals would also allow us to maybe push them towards some of the community events and things like that we love to do. Because that's a huge, huge thing for me is community events and trying
being
to
in front of everybody and showing everybody you're a friend, not a
yes.
I remember as a kid, it's the police duck.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a police officer go say hi.
Yes, and that's huge. Those community events. It's been something I've been pushing ever since I became chief. I've been really trying to get to as many things possible as I can, speak to as many people as I can, come in, talk on things like this, whether it's radio, whatever else it is, a Rotary Club, a Kiwanis Club. Brown bag lunch. All
that lunch and learn, that's what I really like to hear is that you want to do more community things.
Absolutely.
And because somebody mentioned something about a block party that you may have showed up for,
Yep.
it's like I would love to do a lot more of those.
Yep.
And I was thinking, like, when I was a kid, we used to always go to the stadium football games, and Officer Doty was always right
Yep.
there.
Absolutely.
And
Chief
he was
Doty.
there for 20 years or 30 years,
Yep.
Standing in that one spot. And I remember, and I didn't even think of this until after I left that day, but I was like, as we grew up, we never wanted to upset Doty.
Yeah.
He's a friend.
Right. You didn't want to disappoint him.
That's the right word.
Yep. Yeah. So pushing those resources toward that would just continue to keep doing what we've been trying to do since I've been chief. And not that we didn't do community events before, so I'm not saying that because we did. It's just something I've really tried to put a lot of my free time and even some of my time at work into doing because I think you get a lot out of that. From 8 to 4:30 Monday through Friday, it's hard for me to have people want to come in and you'll have people call in or want to stop in and say I want to talk to the chief, I want to talk to the chief or whoever else it is. And it's not that I don't want to take time to do that. It's just if I were to take all those calls and all those things every single day, it would be hard to get my day-to-day job accomplished. So if I go out and do things outside of the normal work hours, then I'm still getting my job done, but then I still get to have positive contacts with people. And it can be anything from having somebody complain about their neighbor's motorcycle being too loud and me just being willing to listen to them and kind of, work them through what that is, to somebody talking to me maybe about not happy about, how something was handled for their case or whatever else it is. Sometimes people just want somebody to talk to and listen. They just want you to listen to whatever it is, and that makes them at least feel validated. It makes them feel like
they don't even want a solution.
Yes.
They just want to know somebody hears them.
And they might already know that there is no solution.
Right.
They just want to know that you care.
Yeah. I had a guy last night ask me what can be done about the neighbors during 4th of July lighting off fireworks and the stuff landing on their house, and wants to know if he can call the police and have them arrested, things like that. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. But he just wanted to talk, and I listened to him, gave him what my answer was, and, he was happy. I mean, maybe not perfectly happy, but he at least
probably had some resolution.
Yes, absolutely. And, when you do these events and you get to talk to whether it's adults or kids or whatever else it is, I think you got a lot of buy-in from your community. They realize that you care. And I think you form relationships that last a long time. And you also build a level of trust within the community that is needed, because one of the things I say all the time is, there's 40 police officers. We can't be everywhere all the time. There's 25,000 people in Fort Dodge that are witnesses at any given moment. But when you get that investment, you get that buy-in, you get that trust, maybe that person that you gave a moment to or you listened to you speak at some event or whatever else it is goes, all right, I trust that if I tell this person, they're going to look into it. They're going to, they're going to listen to me. So now all of a sudden you've just got this buy-in from potentially 25,000 people in town. Now, imagine if 25,000 people in town all basically said to the couple people that are doing the wrong, this ain't going to happen in our community anymore because we're going to, if we see it, we're going to say something.
Yep.
probably lowers the the chances of people wanting to do some of those bad things because they know that somebody's going to say something and then we're going to catch you and we're going to hold you accountable. And I mean, I think that just grows. You may not see the benefits from some of those things for a couple of years, but 5 years from now, when you are hanging out, having breakfast with kids at Duncombe, they may now all of a sudden be like, I remember that patrol officer that came in and sat down and had breakfast with me. I'm going to go talk to him or her, and I'm going to tell him or her what I saw, that it pays off later on down the road.
Yes.
So I remember years ago, somebody gave a really good compliment to you. It was through the school system, and I don't know what happened, but some kid got in pretty good trouble or whatever, and they said that you came and had to give him a little ride down to the police department and bring him back. I don't know how any of that works, but I remember her compliment was like, oh my gosh, the way he conducted himself and talked to the kid and treated him, the kid came back and like the next day was like a really happy and good kid.
Exactly.
So that is awesome.
And that's those kinds of things that it doesn't have to necessarily be a negative, contact. And that's the thing is generally when people see us, sometimes it's in a negative way. And I don't say that as in like we're doing something negative. I mean, mom and dad are fighting or brother
Might be
and sister
some alcohol
fighting,
involved
something.
or
Whatever it is.
upset.
And now they see us come there, where maybe mom or dad gets arrested or brother gets arrested, sister gets arrested, whatever those things. Now all of a sudden you got these little kids going, man, they associate the police as now somebody that took something away from me, a negative experience.
Yep.
But if you go to a community event and you play Jenga with, yard Jenga with some kids, or you're playing some of these games or just having a conversation with them, now it's not looking at us in a negative light. Now they're looking at our officers. Okay, well, they're just like us.
Yeah, they're people.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they care.
Yeah. And they're having fun with me. And I got to go sit and eat breakfast with that police officer the other day. And it was fun. He was listening to me and, he let me look at, all of his equipment on his vest and all those things. I mean, those last hopefully a lot longer than the maybe a couple negative experiences that they have with you. So,
I remember the DARE officers that used to come in to school and like show us that kind of stuff and show us some of the equipment. Yeah. And being like a 7 and 8 year old boy, like that's the coolest thing in the whole world.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was even fun. A 42-year-old boy, look at your vest. I was like, what is that? That is so cool. I bet your flashlight is really awesome.
And this week it's police week this week, and we've been trying to go to all the grade schools because, second to last week of school. So we've been trying to go to all the grade schools this week, and we've went and done high fives in the morning and sit with them and we eat lunch. And it is so much fun. We were at Field Haber yesterday and we were at Duncombe today, and some of the questions that you get asked are just absolute pure gold, and they're just so entertaining. I mean, obviously the normal stuff. Will you arrest my friend? Will you tase my friend? Will you, I had a kid. Yes.
Will you tase my friend right now?
Right.
That would be great.
Yes. I mean, I was been asked if you can arrest a brick, if you can, I was told I was old a couple times, that's always fun.
I get that.
But I mean, you get all these funny things. I had one girl say, "Can you take me to juvie?" And I said, "You don't want to go to juvenile detention." She said, "Yes, I do." I said, "School's better than that." She said, "No, it's not." I was like, I don't believe that. There's no way. School's got to be better than that.
Has to be.
I said, "At least the food's better." She goes, "No, it's not." And I'm like, "I'm looking
How
at
do
it.
you know?
It is absolutely good. The food looked good." So, but I mean, those were so much fun. I mean, and multiple officers going to these things. You sit down and the kids are eating. You just have a conversation with them. And it's so great because you see how excited they get. And all of them want to talk to you at one time, whether you're sitting at a table with 8 or 10 kids. And it is difficult to navigate all the questions and trying to give answers because you want to give everybody, a little bit of that time. So you get, there's one at the other end of the table that's like, hey. And then there's another one. And it is a blast. It's so much fun to do. And it sticks with you, and it helps to reinforce why you do this job. It's for some of those fun things like that, because not everything has to be the negative stuff. So,
and you need to have fun out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're serious a lot of the time, and it's nice to just probably get in front of the kids. And
absolutely.
I know how those lunches are with the kids, because I'll go every once in a while with the kids. Like we do like a reward thing, and like I'll go have lunch with them. The last time I went, this kid across from me had his own cold lunch and asked me to open up his Gatorade, so I did. And right when I did, Benjamin goes, Yeah, my dad is so strong.
Exactly. So then you just feel, look at this.
I am. I can open up a Gatorade.
I'm the strongest person in this room right now. This is awesome.
I am Hulk.
Yes, that's
Did I
right.
hear that, Chief Hulk? I heard that somewhere.
I
can blame Cameron for that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's probably where that came from. Yes. But yeah, no, it's fun. It's you. If you could do it all the time, it'd be so amazing. But obviously, time doesn't do that. But that's why we really tried to, with this being Police Week, I thought, what a great time to get out and also, spend some time with these kids, give them 10, 15 minutes, and they may remember that for a long time. It's amazing how many people say, I want to be a police officer when I grow up. I've had one girl that I've talked at a couple of different events, some after school things at like Butler and things like that. And she has told me from the onset, I am going to be the first female police chief ever in Fort Dodge. And I said, okay, that sounds great. And I saw her again at another event. She said, I'm still going to be the chief. And then I saw her again today. And she came up, gave me a hug. She says, I said, are you going to be my first female chief? She said, yep, I still am. So, I mean,
I think you got someone coming after you.
That's what I said. I said, well, I got some pretty good.
Did you ask her what her timetable is?
Well, I said, you're going to have to probably wait 10, 11 years. But I said, I got some pretty good female officers here. I said, you might have a run for your money. So they might beat you to it. So, but
you can do the police academy this summer.
That's right. So it's pretty awesome. I mean, it's great experience. So, and I love that my officers get to do it too. So.
I know we get asked a lot of times for volunteer opportunities for different people we've talked to. Mm-hmm. If somebody wanted to find some volunteer opportunities, not necessarily, I know they have some reserve type things.
Yep.
What are some things somebody can do to help get involved, to help you guys do your job where they're not getting in the way?
I think yes, you mentioned there is reserves that are through Webster County, which is great. And they do amazing things for us because, they don't get paid, but there's a part of them that just wants to help do a job like that. So that is one great way to do that. But some of the other ways that I always look at is, between like your APHIS, your Next Gen, your mentor programs through the school, things like that. While it's not actually, you're not, working right alongside the police department, it pays dividends and it helps the police department and it helps our community because you're having these positive interactions with kids like we just talked about and giving them someone to constantly talk to, a mentor, somebody. It doesn't have to be a police officer. It could be any person that there is because they just want somebody to give them some time, whether that's playing a game with them, going to a park, going to a meal, whatever else that is.
Need the proper guidance.
Yes. It just give them another voice because let's face it, parents are busy. Parents are, they have, whether you have 4 or 5 kids, you're running them everywhere. Yep. There's one more person that can give them a little bit of extra attention. And when we do that with them, then maybe that changes the course of maybe where they were going to go. Whether it's a kid that's kind of gotten a little bit of trouble here and there, maybe somebody giving them that little bit of that extra time, a little bit of that guidance, like you said, maybe that changes that path that they were on and maybe they decide to go into something else and they, instead of going down the bad road, they take
have
a positive,
those positive influences
positive
that say
direction.
You don't have to do this.
Absolutely. That's where you get the Next Gens and the APHIS and that's trying to do that kind of things with the different youth in our community. And that's important stuff. And like I said, you don't have to be a police officer, a firefighter, an EMT person. You don't have to be a teacher, anything. It could be anybody that can do those kinds of things. You don't have to have money. You have to give the most valuable resource that all of us have that we can never get back. And that's just time.
Yep.
And it is the most important resource.
Time and good advice.
Yeah.
And sometimes to be there to listen.
Just listen. Exactly. And that's what I did a lot of today. Just listen to a lot of different kids tell me different things.
And you can't arrest a brick. No, I won't tase your friend.
No, I will
maybe
not.
Later.
Yes. Yeah. No, you're not getting a ride downtown in the police car. No, that's not happening today.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely great. I did not think of that as an answer, to help those programs around.
Well, they're always looking for volunteers. Think about it. A lot of those things, they're not out for profit, nothing like that. They thrive on people volunteering their time because it's something that takes many hands to make those organizations work. And it's not always, for a monetary gain. So that's what they get is the volunteers that help with them.
So what are some primary focuses moving forward?
So one of the biggest focuses we've kind of touched on was the case for 8. But which is obviously hugely important, and we've kind of covered that. But something that I would say is a big focus is trying to not have another year like we had last year. It would be tough for our community to try to navigate that again.
Yeah.
Like we touched on, we made arrests. We did all those things, but that still doesn't change the effect that it had on the victims, victims' families, things like that. Those stay forever. And it's tough on our community in of itself. You don't have to necessarily be directly involved to have, to suffer from something like that. Clearly not the same as victim families and things like that, but it's still tough. And I don't want to see our community get that painted in that bad light again, because like we discussed, this is a great community. I think we need to do whatever we can to try to interrupt that, change that, and have a great summer, have kids enjoy themselves. And
that's why we started doing this.
Yeah.
It was our way of actually getting the word out there, because we see people coming in from all over the state, and like I was never gonna move here. Mm-hmm. And then we'd give them a tour, and they're calling us afterwards, and like I would have never moved here before I took that tour with you guys.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Growth Alliance, Astra talked about that 2 weeks ago, and it's that same, this is what we can do to help make a difference.
Right. Show the positive.
Let the world know. And the great thing about social media and YouTube especially is if somebody Googles Fort Dodge, this comes up. And they can listen to us say, okay, this is why Fort Dodge is a great place. And this is why those statistics aren't necessarily what you see with statistics. And
when you say you see a change, I think the last council meeting I went to was a year ago, and they were talking about kind of the homeless issue. Mm-hmm. I kind of noticed like the last month, I don't really see much of an issue. I'm not downtown all the time, but like, has that gotten a lot better since they kind of moved around some? I mean, you guys changed the way you did it.
We still have some of that. But something I always talk about with, when I first started going to a lot of these events, I got a lot of questions about the homeless, and what are we doing about the homeless? What are we doing about the homeless? And we passed an ordinance to try to help kind of enforce some things with people that were homeless. I shouldn't say that. It's not that they're homeless. It's some of the things that maybe they were doing, because it's obviously not against the law to be homeless.
Correct.
But something I tried to kind of, impress on people is, be compassionate too at the same time. Like, you don't know, not every single homeless person is a recovering drug addict or something like that. Some people are just down on their luck, had something bad happen. So, when people say like, what are you doing about this? What are you doing about the homeless? Well, we're trying to help them as best we can, but at the same time, people need to want to help themselves too. We can only, we can only push somebody in a direction so far. But I mean, we still do have some homeless. Thankfully, if you're not seeing that at least means that maybe some of the problems that potentially that they were causing or things they were doing are maybe not the same as what they were last year. Hopefully that trend keeps going that direction. But I mean, we still do have some here, and we brought Brittany Baker from CICS. She works inside of our building now. That was a huge thing for us.
Have a social worker there to help.
Yep, and
get people into the right programs.
Yep, absolutely. Because when we go to a lot of these calls, we will suggest like, hey, we'll come in and talk to her. And sometimes people just aren't ready for that yet. But maybe if you deal with them 4 or 5, 6, 7 times, maybe on that 7th time when you hand them that card, say like, hey, call her. Like, she's willing to talk to you, help you. Whether it's
and she wants to help.
Yes, whether it's to get you a social security card, get you a help you get a driver's license, get a bank account, do all these things. She can help with all those things or push you to services, whether it's at Berry Hill or whatever else it is. She can help guide them in that direction. And like I said, it may not be the first time you talk to them, but it may be that 10th time you talk to them.
Maybe the 20th. Yeah. It might be that. Yeah.
And then there's that success. And then there's one person that is maybe, after a certain amount of time, maybe they get themselves an apartment and, they start, they just need that little bit of help.
One
to
person
get
at a time.
Yep. Yes.
One person at a time. All right. Well, we have had a great show, but I have one more thing I want to do. I was on the radio station over lunch, and they did the Mount Rushmore. And today, we're recording this early, so today is Peace Officer...
the National Police Week this week. Yep.
This week. So your Mount Rushmore of fictional police officers.
Ooh.
So think about that for a second. And I have one that comes to mind, and then you guys can kind of fill in. And we got Caleb's going to have to yell one out because we have 4 people and 4 officers. But the only one that came to mind when he told me that was Buford T. Justice.
Oh, boy.
And I just had to go back to Smokey and the
Bandit. Yeah.
And it was just, I'm like, that was a good one. So anybody else we got to fill this Mount Rushmore with 4 fictional police officers.
Oh, I got some. Cobra was one of my favorite. Sylvester Stallone from Cobra was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And also John McClane from Die
That was
Hard.
on my list. Yeah.
Absolutely. He was awesome.
What about the other side and the Terminator 2? Terminator 2, like
The
he's
other
pretty.
side. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
The
He's
liquid, the
technically
mercury
a police
guy.
officer.
I don't know that he was doing what we want police officers doing. He was wearing that uniform, but I don't know if we want that kind of guy running
Have you
around.
seen this boy?
If we could turn him to the right side.
Yep.
Oh, awesome. Well, I think we got our 4, even though one's not really an officer.
He's just posing as one. Yes.
That's right. Awesome. Well, thanks again for being here, Chief Quinn. We really
Absolutely.
appreciate you taking time out of your super busy schedule. And
It was fun.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I
Yay.
appreciate the invitation and chance to talk. So
Awesome.
Good time.
Well, I can feel the positivity from the community.
It's great.
And we feel it with so many of our guests, and we feel it with you too.
Awesome.
And that is just awesome, and just another aspect that things are moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. Just great town. Love this place.
That's a wrap at today's episode of Talk Fort Dodge.
Stay connected with us on social media and join us next time as we continue exploring Fort Dodge's stories through the lens of 2 lifelong Dodgers. I'm Jeremiah Condon.
And I'm Todd McCubbin, and this is Talk Fort Dodge.